good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody around the globe. Welcome to our Stringstastic live event, a monthly live event. I have a special guest today with me all the way from Canada, although she's currently in Utah at the moment. So I know it is a Mother's Day weekend for more than half of the globe. That may be my mistake. I forgot about that. But you know, I know of a handful of people that would want to be watching this. And if you missed this, then don't worry about it. You can always rewatch it. It will still be available on the Stringstastic Facebook page. Otherwise, welcome, guys. And if you're here viewing us, please type down below hashtag live. If you're watching this replay, type down hashtag replay. Otherwise, I'd like to welcome this wonderful woman here in front of me, Christy Hodder. She is let me take out her bio because I can't remember. Okay, so Christy, I found her randomly online, as we all do with a lot of people. And she is the director of the Scotia Suzuki Music School. Correct me if I'm wrong. She's done a lot in regards to, the Suzuki method, as well as speaking about practice itself and how we educate our students in regards to practice. So here we are today with Christy in regards to sharing her knowledge on practice and how we can change the way, or, make practice for our students a little bit more different than what we're used to.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's great. And I haven't been to Australia before, but I love traveling. So maybe I'll get there someday. That'd be great.
Hook me up when you're here anyway.
Yeah, I will for sure. It's not on my list, but lists change, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, just to jump right in, usually when parents, first of all, I do have a Suzuki school, which is interesting, but I didn't grow up with the Suzuki method. And up until I started a Suzuki school, which has been 6 years now, I taught on my own, and I taught in a conservatory. And we have a method sorry, I have a bit of a cold today. We have a method in Canada called the Royal Conservatory of Music, and RCM, we call it for short. And it's an exam system that's really popular here in Canada. So I've taught all different kinds of methods. And the number one strain that I find with any kind of teaching method is that so often parents will sign their children up for music lessons, but they don't understand that they're actually signing themselves up for music lessons, not their child. And that's a huge misconception that parents have. And so many times, parents will say to me, oh, we did music lessons and my child just isn't good at music. And I instantly know without a doubt that the parent didn't have the skills that they needed going into music lessons to know how to have successful practicing and how to have a successful musical experience with their child. Because unlike, say, a swim team or a hockey team where you go and you drop your child off and they do their practicing, or if you're in a ballet program or something like that, you drop your child off, you sit and chat, or you pick them up after. You can also be really involved. I've seen some, actually I was walking down the street just the other day with my grandson, and there was a boy taking tennis lessons, and his father was there taking notes and being really active. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so wonderful. But yeah, music is really unique in that children really just can't do it on their own. They really can't. And if they are doing it on their own and a parent says, oh, they're so independent, they don't need my help, then I also think to myself, imagine how much more they would be able to do then with the support of their parent to help them learn how to practice at home, because they have to find the motivation. Unlike my daughter was in a ballet program, and she went to ballet every single day, pretty much for hours. And she did all of her practicing in her ballet class. And she would get home and have a couple of exercises to do. But that was really it. It all happened inside of her ballet class. Where if you're taking piano lessons, for instance, you have that 1 half-hour, 45-minute, hour lesson. If you're really advanced or really serious, you might have 2 lessons a week. But then the rest of the time is all self-motivated by yourself at home. And, young children, especially, they need help from their parents to figure out how to maneuver through that.
Absolutely. So just backtracking that, now you mentioned about RCM. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's kind of the equivalent to the AMEB in Australia, so Australian Music Examination Board, or for the English Examination Board will be the Trinity College London or the ABRSM, the other equivalent to the examination board. And then moving forward, let's get back to it. So in regards to practice, there's two ways of looking at it. I mean, we can look at it where, like, Suzuki is very great. It is very good in regards to having the parents help the students in regards to the progress. But on the other hand, it's also trying to educate students to kind of be a little bit independent, because in this day and age, we've got parents that are completely like more busy than they used to be back in the day. Yeah, so there's two ways of looking at it. It'll be fantastic if we had the parents on board in regards to the practice and the schedule and things like that. But then, like you said about your daughter going for ballet classes on a daily basis, so she's being helped on a daily basis. So there's a consistency there. For, like you said, you know, we have our lesson for a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour slot. And then it's up to them, the student and the parents, in regards to the practice session for the next 6 days before the next time they see us teachers. So there's only so much we can do. So in regards to educating parents for practice and students, what have you got to say about the two?
Sure. I mean, obviously it just depends on every situation. There isn't one way that's perfect. Every child is different. I have 3 children. They're all completely different. Sometimes I would be like, oh, was it the mailman or the grocery man? Like really, how could you have 3 children that are so different from, you know, the same mom and dad? It's really quite amazing. So, you know, just with my own children, you know, I can say that they all needed different teachers, and they all needed different styles of learning, and with different personalities. You know, my oldest child, you know, they really wanted to have music be something that was, you know, almost therapeutic in their life, like something that would give them a kind of a jazzy, improv, you know, kind of a thing where they could, you know, I would hear him in his room playing his guitar for, you know, an hour, just playing random notes. I'm really not sure what he was playing. And, you know, that was just perfect for him. And his music brought him joy in different ways. So for him, he needed me to help him, you know, organize his schedule in his life so that he was making space for music. Because if a child practices once in a while or only takes their instrument out at their lesson time, they're not going to like playing it, because the teacher is actually practicing with them, and lesson after lesson, they're practicing together. So the teacher doesn't get to really teach them. And I mean, if you have a really experienced teacher that maybe is, you know, a master, oops, did I lose you? Okay. Yeah. A master at teaching, you know, they can make it seem like every lesson you're coming to, they're still teaching, because they have so many, of a cat in the hat. They have so many ways to teach something or explain something or make it seem fresh or new. But they're still basically practicing with your child if they're not taking their instrument out. And so usually that child, after a while, will be discouraged and think that they're not good at playing, and they'll think that it's not really for them, or, you know, it doesn't keep their interest, when really they just need to get that instrument out every day. And, you know, I always tell parents that even if they get their instrument out 5 minutes a day, you know, the fabulous 5, you know, they just have to get it out. And often they'll play longer than 5 minutes, but it's getting it out. Some of the things that really help is putting your instrument on the wall. So if you play the violin, for instance, they have those little hooks. I mean, you wouldn't want to put a really expensive, valuable instrument on the wall, but, you know, most of our rentals that our children have, you know, kids certainly sit out on the wall. It's a little easier for them to get to. You know, piano, you can put it in an area of your house that is maybe a higher traffic area, as long as your child isn't going to be distracted by practicing where there are people around. Little things like that can help, where someone else might need to only practice in their bedroom at night before they go to bed. So for parents, you really have to observe your child and figure out what it is that music can do for them in their lives and what their needs are for it. My second child, she was all about exams and competitions, not just in music, but in every aspect of her life, and still is to this day. And, you know, that really motivated her to have an exam and then work really hard towards it. And then, you know, get there to her exam and feel really, really prepared for it. And that meant everything in the world to her. And my third one, she did not like exams at all. And she was all about performing. You know, for her, it was all about making other people happy. Um, so I think a real secret to being a practicing parent is to really observe your child and figure out what it is that music is to them. Because if you can figure that out, then you have the goal that will help you to know how to motivate them to practice. Yeah.
No, that's so true. Like you mentioned about the 3 kids that you have, that's a big difference in regards to improv, to examinations, to performance. So yeah, wow.
Yeah.
But like, like when with online teaching, as well as when I used to do home visits, I do notice that there are some kids that work better with less distractions. Like you said, to put a piano in a busy area where you see it on a daily basis. But the thing is, then I have parents cooking and making a lot of noise in the kitchen. So that's very distracting for some kids. And there was one particular family where I was teaching two daughters. The older one could not concentrate with all the noise that the mom was making in the kitchen. The younger one could, like she works well in whatever environment you gave her. So it, like you said, it's more of trying to identify the strength of each student or the child in regards to helping them. I mean, I also have students where if there's noise, they work better with noise somehow or another.
Yeah.
So
I do.
Yeah,
I like doing work in a cafe. I love doing work in a cafe. It's like my favorite.
I don't know about practice, but
Yeah. Like, if I'm doing computer work or something, if I'm in a cafe, just the little busyness that's happening all around me. I'm sorry. The busyness just gives me a little bit of energy. So yeah. So I think that
all right, I'd like to say hi to Tracy, I think, and Kathy and then Tracy was on just a moment ago. So yeah, like it's great about putting your instrument out. I have parents putting one of those violin stands instead of the hooks, because sometimes if you're renting a place, you don't really want to damage the wall and things. So a violin stand would be great, out of the way, without having your pets knock it over or the kids knocking it over. But yes, at expensive instruments, I would recommend.
Yeah. Yeah, it does really help a lot. I have one little boy that he's a wonderful player. I started teaching when he was about, I think, 2. Yeah, so like he's older now, so most of his life. And he practices before he goes to bed at night. It's his very favorite thing. He puts his pajamas on, brushes his teeth. It's his routine. Get your pajamas on, brush your teeth. He's all relaxed. And he plays in his bedroom. And then he goes to sleep after playing, beautiful music. And it's really fun. And before he goes to bed, he gets to play his, favorite song before he goes to bed. And I'm like, how beautiful is that, right? To play your favorite song before you go to bed. I really love that about him, and how his family has decided to figure out how to practice that way. Another time that works really well for children is practicing in the morning. It doesn't always work well for parents because it's hard to get up, but kids usually wake up and they have lots of energy and their mind is fresh. And my teacher used to always say a half an hour in the morning is worth an hour at night. Sorry. And I really believe that's true for most children, that they really are more alert and ready to learn in the morning. So that's something that can really help, especially if you're a busy family and you don't have a lot of time, that if you can carve out, a consistent 15 minutes every morning, or a consistent half hour, depending on the age of your child, in the morning, then that can really help you to, have a shorter time that's more consistent in every single day. Is always better than a longer time once in a while. And I think about when I was, in university, it would be the night before your lesson. You're like, oh my gosh, I have to practice so hard, right? Or 2 nights before your
and cram in like an hour worth of practice from one whole week of not practicing.
Yeah, and I mean, and also too for parents, like why are we putting our children in music lessons? We're putting them in music lessons because we want them to learn to do something consistently. We want them to learn that if they do a little bit every day, they get huge results in 5 years, right? And that's very difficult. This generation is into fast. They want fast, they want now. You have a question, you look it up on Google. It's a very different generation than even my kids, or the generation before that. Everything is really fast. So the gift of music to your child and teaching them that they can do a little bit of something that's hard, really hard, because playing an instrument is really hard. It's not easy. Every single day, it empowers them and teaches them that they can do anything. They can do anything at all. I have a little boy, Caleb. He just did his sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm sick, I feel bad. Okay. He did his book 1 Suzuki concert. So often in the Suzuki program, when you get to the end of the book, you have a celebration where you do a concert and you play all the pieces in the book. Not all Suzuki studios do that, but some of them do. And so this little boy is 6, and he started when he was about 2.5. He came right out of the Suzuki Early Childhood Education Program, which is like, and they have different names all over the world, but like kinder music, or the little children music programs. And, he's 6 years old, and he's standing on the stage, and he plays a 25-minute long, all by memory and ear, on stage. And, when he's done, I said to him, I was like, Caleb, you're 6 years old, and you've done something bigger than, your parents probably did when they were a teenager. Like, this is just crazy and insane that you could do something so big and so wonderful. And it was because he'd learned to practice every single day from the time he was 2 till he was 6. So that's 4 whole years later, he can now do this really big thing. But it was 4 years of doing something tiny. So now I look at that child and I say, okay, now you give this child a textbook in university, a big fat, this big fat textbooks that you pick up, and you're like, I couldn't even carry these. And you pick it up, and he'll look at it and say, oh, this is just a concerto. It's a 20-page concerto. I'm going to learn the hard bits first, and I'm going to practice them every single day, 5 or 10 times or 15 times, whatever you're doing. And I'm going to put them all together, all the sections together. And, I look at this big concerto, I'm like, oh, I can do this, this is so within something I could do. So the same thing, they get to university and they have this big text all about, whatever their subject is. And they look at it and they go, oh, that's just a concerto. I can do a few pages every day. And by the end of the year, I can do big things by doing a little bit every day. It's a simple concept, but to me, that's the gold of practicing, is giving your child.
No, that's it. Yeah, no, like I've taught a lot of young students about 4-ish, 5-ish, and I don't really use the Suzuki method, but sometimes I do use the Suzuki books itself, because kids just love playing those big pieces. And I've only taught her like about a year, and she's working on grade 2 standards, and she loves it. Like, oh yeah, that's easy, kind of thing. But it really depends on the student. Like, there's some students from me where I can just go, okay, sight read the first line so that I know what their level is or what the difficulty is. And then I'm like, okay, because you did really well in that first line, you can learn that whole song by yourself, and then will play for me for next week. There's some other students where the one line is just enough for them to practice for the week. So it's very different from, not every student you can teach the same way. It's very different for every student. So it's kind of monitoring in a sense. So yeah, I don't know. There is a question that came in about how much work can we give our student, from somebody, from Taylor. So Taylor asked about how much workload can we give to our students. And for me, I would say it depends on the capability of the student. There's some students, like for my students, every single one of my students have at least 4 to 5 books. And that's because I encourage a lot of sight reading on top of that. So what would your approach be for your teaching or in your school or in your program?
I'm a real fan of practice charts. So, but not just practice charts that one size fits all kind of practice chart, but a practice chart that's more empty, a more empty practice chart. And I really like making sure that you stop practicing before the child is frustrated. So again, it comes back to parents observing and teachers observing. And as a teacher, you always have to remember that you're like Glinda the witch, right? So if they can do it 10 times with you, they can't do it 10 times with their mom at home or their dad at home. Not usually, whoever their practice parent is. Usually if they can do it 10 times with you, maybe it'll be 5 times or 6 times at home, because we're magic, right? That's why the parents keep coming back to us as teachers, because we just have that little special thing that makes the child believe in themselves, and it's fresh and it's new, and we can get so much out of them. So one of the things I like to do with the teeny tiny children is is I do, instead of saying A scale, I say garden. I just call it garden because, this is more fun. So I do A, drop B, drop C sharp, pop B. So I do drop and pop fingers, and they come all the way down again. And that's really hard for them when they're 2 or 3, right? That's so hard for them. And they have to really let you help them. And so what I'll do is I just have some markers here just because I'm in my son-in-law's office and he has markers here, but I'll just, every time they do it, I'll put a flower on their stand, for instance. And then as the flowers or as the markers or whatever you're counting with start to get bigger, I'll say, wow, look at how much work you did. If you quantify a student's what they're doing by their work, and they can see the work. So young children need to see their work. And you line up 4 markers, and you say, okay, well, we're gonna play Twinkle Star, and then we're going to come back and do a few more gardens. And then you do 2 or 3 more gardens. And then you always have to make sure that you leave something that's hard and do something that's easy, that your mind and your fingers and your body already knows it's in their muscle memory. Then you'll learn much faster. So do something that you already know, and then attach to it the new thing. So I'll actually attach to the neurons in your mind the new thing. And so you do 2 or 3 gardens or scale, and then you do something that you know really well. Then you do 2 or 3 more and do something you know really well. You could do it upside down and backwards, and reciting a poem, you can still play it. And then you do 3 more of the new thing. And then as the stand gets full of flowers, you can then teach them that they're hardworking. I say, wow, look at all your hard work. That's really key. Look at it. I can see it. You've done all this work. You're so hardworking. And it's really important that we emphasize that they're working hard and that they can see it. I think that's really key for a lot of practicing.
It's more of acknowledging their hard work kind of thing. So that, like you said, like the flowers is a fantastic idea in regards they can see the effort they have done for their practice. For me, I use the 40-piece challenge that we have here. Mm-hmm. And the 40-piece challenge is where students finish. The goal is for them to learn at least 40 pieces within a year. And I've been running this for, let's say, about 6, I think, give or take 5-6 years. So I've got a chart now. This is May. Yes, May. Mm-hmm. 5 months. I've already have 3 students that have already learned more than over 100 pieces. So nice. They're competing with each other, like, oh, who's the highest? Nice. Who's the lowest? Yeah. So it actually encourages them to practice like independently. Mm-hmm. As well. So that's
for sure. I think that, like, again, emphasizing their work, not what they're doing it correctly. There's one activity that I'm really not a fan of. It's you hold your hand out and you put pom-poms in one hand. And then when they do it correctly, you move a pom-pom over to the other hand. But if they mess up, you move a pom-pom back. And so I really try to avoid practicing games and activities like this, because you want a child to learn that they can be safe making mistakes, and that making mistakes is how they learn. It's not something that if you do it right, you win, and if you do it wrong, you lose. And to always emphasize that they're working hard, that they're being creative, that they're always praise and always focus on their actions and their effort, not the actual result. So instead of saying, wow, you got that C sharp high enough, instead you could say something like, you are really working hard at getting that C sharp high. Like, there's a huge difference in a child's mind. And so if you can learn to use language that makes a child believe in themselves and want to work hard, they will practice twice as long. They will practice 3 times as long.
Experimenting with words and see which words work within each child in regards to encouragement.
Mm-hmm. Words are huge. And also another thing I think that really helps with practicing is to make sure that they're repeating enough. Usually what happens in practicing is a child will play something and they'll go da 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 da. Oh, not quite right. Da 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 da. Not quite right. Da 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 da. Oh, I got it right. Great! Yay! I got it right. And then they move on to the next thing. And the biggest practicing mistake. Like seriously, it's the biggest one. Or maybe they'll do it twice, but it took them 6 or 7 times to get it right.
And then it's practicing it
right.
incorrectly 7 times and getting it correctly 1 time. So it's actually practicing the mistake rather than correcting
it. Exactly. Yeah. So I talk a lot with my students about, okay, that's not practicing, that's learning. Okay, here's the learning. And this now we're done learning it. So we finished learning it. Now we've got it. It took us how many times to learn it? 6 or 7. Okay, now we need to practice it 10 or 12, because we want the good guy to be winning. We want the good guy to always be winning. So the repetition.
So what I'll say is, you got to play it 3 times perfect in a row, because we need to get it right. It's not 7 times incorrect and then 1 time correct. So the moment they play it, the first one correct, like, great, let's see if you can play it 2nd time in a row. And then if they make a mistake, okay, let's go back to 1, and then let's keep moving. It's like, okay, let's do it. Now you played it perfect 2 times in a row. Let's see if you can do it 3 times in a row. So if they make a mistake, it's going back to 1. So it's kind of like, is that consistency? So that it's working towards that. But I find with the older kids, like especially transfer students, like you said just now, in regards to, in this day and age, everybody wants it quick. We want to do things fast and we expect like fast results. But like there's some kids where you need to kind of have them visualize and telling them what to fix. It's something for them to see, like, oh, okay, my hand has to be, in this shape. I got to remember that. Okay, I got to remember that my violin's not supposed to be too high. I got to remember like how I'm sitting on the piano. So some students work well with lists that they can see, rather than okay, I'm gonna play this again. All right, let's play it again. So it's them visualizing it and having kind of like a list of what they need to work on, and it's kind of like, before a student plays, I'll always say, all right, did you think about it before you play? Like, we're not playing a mistake, right? Like, what do you have to remember to do? Your dynamics. What about your, curve fingers, or remember to stretch your finger, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really nice to have a focus. I love giving 1 focus instead of 4. I have a few students that want 2 focuses, and they're like, no, I can do them all. And I'd be like, well, how about you do this 1 and you make it like cement, so it's permanent, and then I never have to remind you to do it again, and you never notice that you're forgetting it. There's something really important about that, right? If you could fix or improve on 1 thing every month, then that's 12 things in a year. Like, how many things are there fundamentally that you need to fix in a child's posture? Like, not a lot. And so 1 thing, when I have a transfer student, I have to stop and have to remind myself and look at the child and say, okay, what one thing can we change? 1 thing. And you just have to allow these things not to happen. When I work with teeny tiny children, I'm really hands-on. And so I'll give them 1 focus, and I'll say, this is your focus. You're going to have a hanging hand. So we're going to have a hanging hand. We're going to have a hanging hand. We're going to have a hanging hand. That's what we're working on. Yay, you got your hanging hand. So like, we're just going to think about that for a month, but then I'll physically manipulate the other things. So I'll give them bendy knees with my hands. I'll swing their elbow with my hands. I'll, adjust their head with my hands, but I won't talk with them or even bring their attention to it. And I really find that helps young children to learn very quickly, especially if they're a remedial child that's come from somewhere else. But if you start telling them more than 1 thing, 2 at the tops, then
too much.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's building rather than, you got to remember this 5 things and you got to fix all the 5 things.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I know it helps when parents are on board of the practice. The question that somebody, Bob mentioned, asked is, how do we get parents on top of practicing, especially now in this day and age with COVID? Like, there's some studio teachers where they only take 1 student at a time and parents are not allowed in their space. And that's fair enough, especially in this day and age. However, like for me, what I do is if the parents want to view a lesson, I set up a camera and say, okay, you can view the lesson via Zoom while I teach your child in the lesson, so at least they know what's going on. Otherwise, I do record the lesson, and then if the parents ask for it, or if the parents want to see sections of the lesson, then at least I can send it through for them to kind of follow through what's going on in the lesson, so that they can help their kids in regards to the practice. So what have you done, or what would you do or suggest in that regard of having the parents on board?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, parents are just ridiculously busy. I mean, they're so busy. And the expectations, like, I'm sure that every city and every country is a little bit different. But in Canada and in Halifax, where I live, you know, the students are doing 5 activities. And honestly, they get a lot of the students, especially the girls, get to be like 12 and 13. And I get really worried about them for their mental health. You know, they're doing so many things that they're, you know, a jack of all trade and master of none. And they can't really feel good about themselves that they're really good at something. So, I mean, I would say as a teacher, it's not your job, but if you want to be a teacher of the next level, and you're like, you know, I want to be a teacher of the next level, I would not just teach the child. I would go into my lesson and say, okay, I'm teaching Sally today, but I'm also teaching something to her mom. Now, you can teach something to her mom and her mom not be there, right? And an example would be, for instance, you know, I'm asking Sally to practice every day. So I could send a note or email to the mom and just say, look, you know, I would love to see Sally practice every day for 5 minutes. And can you do this together? So can you sit with her for 5 minutes a day and practice? Or if you're too busy to sit with her or she's independent, can you do push-ups for 5 minutes while she's away? Or can you know, whatever it is that you want to do. And you just little baby steps to get the parent involved. If the parent is doing something every day, that's something that's important to them, whether it's writing in their journal or, you know, it can be calling a friend or a family every single day, like touch in with the parents and just say, you know, doing something every day is really, really important. That's the most important thing that your child is learning by doing, is by playing an instrument, is to do something every day. So what can we do together so that she sees that you value doing something every day as well? So, you know, that could be maybe your goal for September is to, you know, have the child's whole family do something for 5 minutes a day. You know, then maybe a couple months later, when everyone in the family is doing something 5 minutes a day, you could move on to something else. And you could say, hey, Sally's mom, checking in with you again. She's doing really great, because I'm assuming that she's dropping them off in this example. She's doing really great. And she says that you haven't had coffee for 2 months now, or whatever your goal is. And, you know, now let's see if we can find a place for Sally to practice that is quiet. Because when we were chatting, she says that when she practices, it's kind of loud. So when we do something that's really important that we need to focus on, we need a really quiet place. Can you think of some ideas on how that can be fixed and get back to me next week? So there's so many ways that you can involve the parent in, but it's definitely that next level of teaching. It's that next level. And, you know, it's easier not to, but in the long run, you know, making a connection and changing the family, that's where music is really powerful, is changing family. And if you made one tiny change in a family for good, every 3 months, and your child takes lessons from you for 10 years, you've now made, let's see what's math there, you've made a lot of changes for good in a family, right? As a music teacher, you can be, again, this is the next level of teaching. You can teach how to play an instrument, or you can change students. You can change families. It's pretty miraculous. It really is.
It is like, you know, that's the beauty of about teaching. It's like changing and encouraging students in that sense, and like you say, it's the next level up. But I think the most important thing about teachers is we need to have a good communication with parents. It's understanding your student, but also converting that information that you have, or trying to understand the student from, you know, from home in that perspective kind of way. But like, there's many a time where I would suggest to parents, have you gotten, you know, like Sally's eyes tested, because it looks like she doesn't like to look at the book, like she's just looking away from the book, you know? So it's little things like that, you know. Or I've had a student that used to come to lesson really angry, and it's like, why, you know, why are you angry? And that's because she's always been bullied in school. So it's understanding the student, helping them, having that communication with parents, helping them, you know, as much as you can. I do have 2 deaf students. So I have a student where she doesn't have any ears at all, and she wears hearing aids, and she learns the violin. So the way that she learns is she says her thought process out loud, and the parents used to go, oh, you know, stop talking, let's stop playing, you know, why are you talking? And all this, thing kind of discouraging her from speaking. But I was like, that's her thought process, is like she's explaining what she understands. So, the way that she learns will be really different from the normal human being with, good working ears comparatively to herself. So it's looking at the situation of the child, communicating with parents so that they are on board, because now the parents of this particular child goes, oh, I never thought about it that way. So they're more patient with her now at home, and the environment at home now is much more pleasant rather than screaming at the kids and pushing them, or like what parents like to say, forcing their kids to practice. It's having the student enjoy the instrument and wanting to practice as well, which is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. We talked a little bit earlier about, how long a student practices for. And what I like to do is make a practicing chart that ends 5 minutes before the length that you want them to practice. So let's say you want them to practice 20 minutes. Let's say their lesson is half an hour. I remember I talked about how it's easier to do things with your teacher. So you can do less at home. So if your lesson is half an hour and you're having trouble with your child practicing, I mean, if you're not, then this might not apply. But so let's just say at home, you're going to aim for 20, because they can do half hour with their teacher. So make a practice chart that they can see what they need to do, and they can check it off, and they can check it off themselves. They can put a sticker on. So they're like, okay, this is what I need to do. And this is really important. Make the list 15 minutes long. So if you want them to practice for 20 minutes, make the list 15 minutes long. Then you can go to my website. You can get tons of free practicing things there. There's like dozens. You can also go to anywhere online, and you can get, music bingo, or, any kind of music game. And then say to them, we're talking about Sally here. You can say to Sally, you can say, okay, as soon as, and this is really important, your language, as soon as you check off your 8 things today to practice, then we can play your music bingo for the rest of our practice time. And set your timer for 20 minutes. That child will work so hard for you to get those 8 things done, because they want to play music bingo with their very busy dad or their very busy mom, who doesn't, not that they don't have time for them, they do, but they're just really busy. And you give them your undivided attention for that last 7 minutes or 8 minutes or 3 minutes, however long they have left over. I find that really helps. And then, eventually bump it up to 23 minutes and 25 minutes and 27 minutes. But the key is to make their list shorter than the length of time. And as teachers and parents, a mistake that we often make is we make that list too long. And then we say to them, oh, we didn't get to finish today, all of it. So tomorrow we'll start here and we'll just keep going. And that's really deflating for a child. Like, they want to finish it. Like, we want to finish things, right? We want to finish things, and then we want to eat dessert, right? That's what we want. I want to finish my meal and have enough calories left over to have some chocolate fudge, right? Which children are exactly the same. So I think that's a huge thing with practicing lists, is make it too short and then have something special for them to do at the end that they get to choose and get your undivided attention.
True. So there's some students, for my case, where they only practice, let's say, these 2 books more than the rest. And that's because, they feel that they can achieve that faster than the other books. So what I would do for these students is I would get them to write the title of the songs that they're meant to practice for the week, crumple it up, put it in a box, and kind of randomly pick out what piece they have to practice, rather than they always practice book A first every single day, which means that song is always played the best compared to the rest, and the scales is usually the last. You know what I mean? So it's putting that all in a box, kind of picking out like a raffle and getting them to practice pieces randomly. So for me, some students, they don't have to practice all their materials in one practice if they don't have that time. Like, kids got dance classes and soccer and birthday parties and after school care, before school care kind of thing. It's a busy lifestyle, right? So it's getting them to make use as much of their practice time in practicing all the stuff that they need to do. But like you said, it's having the task manageable for the kid. Like, sometimes I give Like sometimes like my kids go, can I do an extra 2 pages worth of work because I want to beat Tom on the 40 piece challenge? Give me more work, you know? So it really depends on the student itself. I like to give set high goals for my students personally, but that's for myself. Like I know all teachers are different. So for me, I would say to the child, if your lesson is 30 minutes, ideally you should be practicing twice as much. However, it's okay if you can spend like 15 to 20 minutes, depending on what grade they are in or what level they are in. It's just more of encouraging them rather than going, you're not reaching the hour of practice per day.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had some parents too that, I mean, they're all different, right? So we were talking earlier about, children that have trouble practicing. And, and some children don't have trouble practicing, or their parents are very demanding too. And I've had a few parents that I've said to them, your child's practicing too much. That's happened to me once or twice. It has. Once or twice they'll say, I think they're practicing too much. You always want to see that light in their face. And if the light isn't in their face, then when they get to grade 12, they're going to say, I'm never touching this piano again because I'm out of my house. And you don't want that for your children. So again, every personality is different and every family is different. So definitely, I have one girl right now, she's, getting ready to audition for university, and she has one more year, and she practices for hours a day, and it's amazing, but she didn't start out that way. And for parents, it's really important to understand that I teach 2 and 3-year-olds. They start out with 10 minutes. They start out with 5 minutes. They start out with 11 minutes. They just start out with 3.5 minutes, but the secret is every single day, every single day, and to stop just before they're frustrated. If you feel that they're starting to get frustrated, then make it a little shorter that day. Make it a little shorter that day. Like let them, and we're talking young children, let them leave the piano or the guitar feeling really good about themselves. I'm also a fan of starting and ending every practice with their favorite song. So when they play their first song, I think it's really important that as a parent and as a teacher, I start every lesson with the child playing a song for me. And I ask them to play a song for me that they would play for the Queen. If the Queen of England came, or a Martian came from outer space, and, you're going to represent all violin for Canada for the Queen, or all violin or all piano for this Martian who is never going to see a violin player again. This is their only chance. What's the piece that you play the best? That's the piece I always want them to play first for me. And I bite my tongue till it bleeds. And sometimes I do bite my tongue till it bleeds. And do not correct that first song. Children need to be able to play something and you to say, wow, I can tell you really love that song. Not, wow, that was great. Because that's telling that would be inappropriate wording. You don't want to say, wow, that was great. Because you're saying, I think it was good. But what do you think about it? Like, wow, I noticed you were tapping your foot. You had such a nice smile on your face. I love the way you sway when you play that piece. I can tell that you really love playing that piece. That first piece of the lesson or of the practice is when you get to mirror back to them that they love music and they love it, and that they think that they're good at it. Not that you do, but that they do. And then I love to end every lesson or every practice with a party song. And I usually call it that. I'm like, when do you want to play for a party song? And quite often that's when they'll bring out the pop song or their composition or a fiddle song or the song that their newest song, they can hardly get through. And you'll say, okay, let's play a party song together. And then they leave with a big smile on their face. And again, that party song at the end, you do not ever say, oh, that C sharp was wrong and that you need to fix that. But the first song and the last song of your lesson in your practice should always be about how good their music makes them feel. That's the emphasis. Then if they make a C sharp wrong, or you want to work on their dynamics, or their counting's really crazy in one part, then I just write a note in my book. And then the next lesson, when they come in and they play their song for me, then I say, okay, today we're going to work on da 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 da. They never know that you're actually correcting their song from the week before or the week before. But I believe that's really important as teachers, that we don't fall into the pit or the trap of just always correcting. Always correcting, always correcting, always correcting. And then always seeing, yeah, that was good or that was not good. That was good or that was not good. And forgetting that it's not always about it being right or wrong. It's about how they feel about their music, how it makes them feel special, and also how they can share it. I love having concerts. At our school, we have concerts, 5 concerts every other weekend, or 6. We're like the concert machine school. And the reason why is because when I grew up, I wanted to share my music, and I went to music festival at the end of the year, and that was it. That was the only time I got to play. So it was under a stressful situation, and where I was being, judged. And that was how I got to play. And it was always my dream someday to have a program or have a school that the children can play all the time, and the emphasis on making other people happy. So when the kids go up on the stage, or the week before they're playing in a concert, I always like to remind them and say, hey, so you're going to play for, your grandma, your grandpa, and your friends and your neighbors, and you're going to make them smile. Their faces are probably going to hurt because they're going to smile so much through that song. And that's really beautiful. And like Caleb last weekend, when he did his book 1 concert, at the end, I just said, hey, I saw people smiling for almost half an hour. And it's because of you, you made all those people smile. And wow, that's pretty powerful when you're 6 to be able to, make 30 people feel something like that. That's pretty amazing. And if kids can understand that when they're really young, then they practice a lot better, because they get it. They get that it's not just punishment. They're not going to army boot camp and, put on by their parents and their music teacher, but they're actually doing something that makes them feel good. And their parents are giving them a life skill of learning to do something every day, and learning how to make big things into small pieces and find them easier to do. And they're learning how they can help other people to feel happy. It's pretty amazing.
It is. No, that's really great. Like, I don't do 5 concerts every 5 weeks kind of thing. It is a lot of work for myself. But like when I do have student concerts, I always say something good about each performance. Like you say, it's encouragement. It's like, oh, wow, did you guys enjoy that? Or, what do you think was good about that? But for myself, I do a lot of group lessons, like group theory lessons or group music camps. And what I like to do is I like to encourage students to play for each other. And having said that, what I'll do is I'll get students to kind of point out the strengths in that performance. Like, what do you see in that? What was good about that performance, whether or not they counted well, or they set properly, or they had the 3-second rule. The 3-second rule for me is when they finish playing, they wait for 3 seconds before they put the instrument down, rather than turning and looking at the audience. So it's kind of performance practices, like, oh, did they do that really well? Did they sound really confident? Did they do the dynamics? So kids start to point out what other kids do well. And then in that sense, when they do it themselves, they remember, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. Or, oh, I'm really good in doing this. I'm really good in my rhythm section. So they notice all the little wins. I call them little wins. They notice all the little wins, rather than you got to fix this. Like, I grew up with, this is wrong, you have to fix this, finger 2 or da-da-da. Everything is always wrong. So for the performance side of it, for me growing up was really stressful, because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. And my mom's a musician. So I'm thinking, oh man, like, she's going to point out every single mistake, and it needs to be perfect for me. But now, having gone through that and seeing my students, it's changing the way that I used to be brought up in that really tense environment. It's making it more relaxed manner. So like for my students, I like to over prepare them so that when they're in the performance and they're nervous, at least, even though they're nervous, they still get to perform really well, and they notice, the certain areas, although they make like 1 or 2 mistakes there, so the whole performance was really well played. So yeah, it's encouraging, and all those little comments that, us as teachers can encourage and instill in our students, for them to notice their strengths in their performances and their playing.
Yeah, I love it. And just sharing the joy of their music with other people. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so having said that, if anyone has any questions for Christy or myself, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would just share this page. I'll write out there in the link in regards to how you can get in touch with Christy. So this is the website that I found. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's Suzuki. That's the Suzuki website. So yeah, okay. you could use that. But I have a practicing course. It's a 6-week course, and it's for parents and teachers. And I go step by step through every one of the little steps that you need to know to from the very beginning to the very end to have success in your music practices. So a lot of the things we talked about today, but actually written down. So when we're talking about practice charts, I have some examples of practice charts, how to use them, why you would use one over another one, reviewing how to learn the fastest, how to really have an effective practice so that you can practice for 20 minutes or 45 minutes instead of an hour or two and accomplish as much. Because sometimes, if you have a child that's practicing an hour or two, but they come and they're not really improving, then, you just need to figure out what they're doing that's not working and they're practicing. So things like that. And there's also my favorite part of the course is I actually go to my music school in the closet, and it's a really fun video. And I go through a lot of the teaching supplies and things that I use in my closet. It's really fun. But yeah, I like that part about the course too. We talk about repetition, like how to know how many times to repeat things. And I call it the magic practice formula. And I find that if the children know the magic practice formula, then it's not you telling them, kind of like you said, you crumple up the papers and put it in. So it's not you telling them what to do, it's them telling themselves because they chose it. And so all of a sudden you're not saying do, D minor scale, but the paper said it. And a lot of time that makes children, not as frustrated with you telling them, I don't want to do D minor scale. That's my worst scale. But they pick the paper, so it makes it easier. So I find that practice charts really, the chart says it and the teacher says what goes on the chart. And so it cuts back on a lot of arguing and saying they don't want to do things at home if you have a child that's like that. So I love practice charts. So yeah, that course there's a wait list for it right now because I'm not running it at this very moment. I just finished a course, but I'll start another one for September.
No problem. So I'll get the information for those of you that are interested in that particular course with Christy. Otherwise, if you're interested in my teacher's program, by all means, and if you want to look into that, you can always contact me as well. Now, before we end this series, this is what is happening next month. We'll be talking with Angela Harmon on classroom management. She runs orchestras in schools and things like that. So she's really successful in orchestra practice. So that may give some people an idea, even though you don't do string group, this is something that you don't want to miss. It's getting ideas from a lot of people, and that's what I like to do in my platform. It's getting people such as yourself, Christy, in sharing your your knowledge and your insight in regards to what you've tried and what works for you, so that other teachers can try in their own studio as well. So thank you, Christy, for coming on today and sharing with us. You look really beautiful, even though you're sick.
I'm
you look
so
really
sick.
young in my eyes.
I actually have a really high fever, and I was worried that when I was talking that I would ramble and not make any sense. So I hope that I didn't do that too much, but yeah, it was really a pleasure to be here, and thanks to you for inviting me.
Not at all. And thanks for reviewing my book as well and getting my book. So that's really, really, really nice of you. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. If you do if you do have any questions, I'm going to leave a link below in regards to Christy's course and my course. So you can always get in touch with us if you want more details about it. We're here to help you guys. No matter which part of the world you may be, you can always download, like Christy said, you can download some resources from her website. Again, I'll leave that in the link below after we end this. And you also can download some stuff from my website as well. So we're here to help. And thank you, Christy. Until next time, guys, have a very fantastic Mother's Day, wherever you may be. And I hope you guys enjoy. So until next time, bye. And thanks, Christy.
You're welcome. Bye.